My 2020 Southeast Asia adventure was cut short by the onset of the coronavirus, which ended my trip on March 23rd. The highlights included Chinese New Year's, a flower festival, International Hot Air Fiesta, a Hilltribe trek, 2-day boat ride on the Mekong River, exploring the plain of jars in Laos, caving in Vietnam, and lots of beach time in Ko Samet, Thailand. Using the SkyTrain and the Chao Phraya ferry, I first went to Khao San Road, a backpacker haven, and then on to Chinatown, where the Chinese New Year celebrations were going on. These alleys were filled with all kinds of goods and treats, as well as customers. The Kuan Yin Shrine is adjacent to the Thian Pha Foundation, a charity hospital. The Goddess of Mercy is worshipped here.
ไปใครจะรู้ว่าปีนี้อาจจะเป็นปีทองของเราปีเรียกว่าอะไรนะปีเฮงของเราก็ได้
Here are some amazing agile dragon dance performers who lunge from elevated pole to pole.
เจ้าแม่โคตรจริงครับหมาดุเดือดครับตบมือนะครับมาเที่ยวนะครับถนนคนเดินในทิศนิวเยียร์เยาวราชนี่แหละครับลีลาของเขาครับความสามารถของเขาครับสองคนยืนบนแป้นเดียวเจ้าหน้าที่เดินไปนะครับนะให้ชูมือนะครับนะแล้วก็เดี๋ยวให้เจ้าหน้าที่ไปรับอังเปาจากท่านเพื่อที่มาให้สิงโตนะครับ
Afterwards, I stopped at the crowded Siam Paragon Mall, one of many opulent malls filled with high-end retail stores and car dealers. Heavy rains flooded the Bangkok streets as I made my way to the Mai bus station for a 3-hour ride to the Banho pier, followed by a half-hour boat ride to Ko Samet Island. Once on the island, I rode a songtao to the Ao Pudsa Bungalows, my favorite, where I got a beachside bungalow just before another downpour. People returned to the Ao Pudsa beach after the rains. There was a stacked rock garden in front of my bungalow, as well as a nearby restaurant. There were lots of restaurants to choose from on Ko Samet. These spirit houses are found at many homes and businesses throughout Thailand. I returned to Bangkok for an air-conditioned sleeper train to Chiang Mai that took about 11 hours for the 360-mile journey. It was a comfortable way to travel and about the same cost of a hotel room, about 1,000 baht. When I arrived, I was surprised to see that the Chiang Mai Flower Festival was in bloom. I learned that there would be a parade the following day. Night markets in Chiang Mai are a major draw for tourists and locals alike. Each night they rotate the location of these pop-up night markets filled with food and retail vendors along with entertainment. Some of the permanent bazaars have entertainment stages where you can enjoy free performances while having drinks and food. Chiang Mai Cabaret always has an enjoyable ladyboy or katoi performances of lip syncing while wearing their over-the-top. After the show, the ladyboys pose with customers, including me. I had a front row view of the parade filled with beautiful festival queens and princesses, elaborate flower-laden floats, marching bands, drill teams, and ethnic groups. This turned out to be a 4-hour parade, and these are just short clips of what I saw. It was surprising to see no military bands or marching platoons present, unlike we see in the US, because there have been over 13 military coups, with the last in 2014, who ruled until June 2019 when they elected a prime minister. However, this prime minister was the head of the military junta when the pro-military parties in parliament elected him.
These aren't real.
The Wat Phra Singh Buddhist temple is the most revered in Chiang Mai. It was established in 1345, received a royal designation in 1935, and was remodeled in 2002, now clad in gold and festooned with mosaics. The parade ended at this park, which was used to display the many floats. I headed northwest from Chiang Mai for the head-spinning 2.5-hour drive to Pai as our van navigated the 793 curves. I stayed at this fan-cooled hut just across the Mai Nam River. This is the first of the 2 Wats I visited. This Wat is by the Pai market. In the evenings, I enjoyed some of the entertainment venues. She was the most enjoyable of them. I got a lot of exercise climbing these 353 steps to the big white Buddha that dominates the skyline of Pai. However, the smoke from the slash and burn agriculture practices obscured the view. Another night of entertainment with Jane, with few remaining Chinese tourists as worries about the coronavirus increases. While on a much smaller scale, the tourists here remind me of those I encountered along the Khao San Road in Bangkok, a backpacker haven. Instead of Nescafe Instant, here it was lattes and featured all things avocado, from toast to avocado benedict or avocado omelets, a millennial's delight. From Chiang Mai, I headed north to Chiang Rai to do a Hilltribe trek, as I had done several years ago.
Okay, this is supposed to cook for 4 minutes, so who knows what I'm doing, but it's got seafood and then meat in it, and then different vegetables. So, yeah. Anyway.
The hot pot meal was more enjoyable than the entertainers. I joined 3 others for this Hilltribe trek. 2 were from France and the other was from the US. We began with a boat ride up the Mekong River. The nearby Karen village offered tourists these elephant rides.
Shot.
Our guide, Mo, leading us, was from the Lisu village where we would spend the night. We hiked an overgrown trail that was only used by tourists like us because the Lisu villagers traveled to their villages by car and motorcycle. Here, Jacques and Joël are whacking their way along this overgrown trail.
Hello.
Yes. Oh, another one. Cup kun cup.
Our Lisu tribe encampment was rustic with bamboo and leaves as contrasted by the concrete block homes of the locals.
Shallots.
We had a great meal of curry chicken and vegetables in our rustic dining room.
เสียตาน่ะ300เท่าไหร่ไม่รู้ค่าเด็ดแน่นอนเลยค่าเด็ด
ด่วนบริษัททรัพย์ประมงกฎหมายและการบัญชีจำกัด
Here are stacks of building blocks that the tribe will use to build another concrete block home. We headed down the trail to the Banho Chinese village with its oolong tea plantation. Our Lisu guide, Mo, began collecting large bamboo sections, which he planned to use as casserole containers. We were met at the Waihia waterfall by his boss and the boss's wife and child, Chai, June, and Puman. They joined us for lunch, which included fire ant larvae, which they bought from some Aka villagers. It turned out that June had been a chef in Missouri for 2 years, which explained why the flavorings were so great.
And this is Chai and June filling up the bamboo with fire ant larvae. Can't wait to taste them and get even with those little fire ants for biting.
The food-filled bamboo cylinders were heated on the fire. While waiting for lunch, Puman enjoyed watching on my iPad the videos of the Chiang Mai entertainment and parade.
Come on.
He also staged a stabbing along with his mother, June.
Vegetables.
ซุปทำไมมันถึงจืด
So this is the omelet with the fire ants?
No.
No? Oh, okay. That's
The fire ant larva reminded me of crunching into caviar, but not as salty, and it was flavored with coriander and lemongrass. We continued on down to the Lahu village and on to the Karen village where we had started.
And this one is original house. And only one house, they have house number.
At the end of our trek, we went to the Karen Village hot springs, which soothed our tired muscles.
Okay.
During the trek, Michael told me I should check out the Chiang Mai Hot Air Balloon Fiesta. When I got back to Chiang Mai, I caught a taxi out to the fiesta early in the day and met up with a group of Hmongs who were having a gathering. While there, I watched a number of tug-of-war contests among different groupings of women, followed by dancing. By then, the International Hot Air Balloon Group began inflating their balloons.
พื้นถนนทั่วไปแล้วก็มีแท็กแบบmountain bike ด้วยนะครับผมก็ยังไงก็สามารถมาได้นะครับ
I enjoyed seeing so many shapes and sizes, as did the others.
ไลท์ 2.5 ครับ
โอ้โหพี่เขามายืนรอ
เขาบอกว่าจะให้ไหมครับผมเอ้า150ไลท์นับ3รับไปเลยโอเคถือว่าขึ้นมาค่ะ
รบกวนหยิบไปแค่เท่าที่ตัวเองเอามากันนะคะเพราะว่าถ้าหมดแล้วหมดเลยนะคะรบกวนให้คนอื่นจะได้มีโอกาสเก็บด้วย
รางวัลเราไม่ได้เหลืออยู่นะเพราะว่าไม่ได้เหลืออยู่แล้วก็โดนตัวตุ๊กตา
ไม่อยู่
ตุ๊กตาไม่ได้โดนลง รางวัลกลางวันเราไม่ได้เหลืออยู่นะเพราะว่าไม่ได้เหลืออยู่แล้วก็โดนตัวตุ๊กตา
I think this balloonist got the award for the worst balloonist after crashing into the tree and almost hitting the electrical lines.
Doing good.
And on top of the car.
This will entertain us the next 20 minutes.
It was then on to Laos for a 2-day ferry boat ride down the Mekong River. It was a 2-hour bus ride to the Friendship Bridge, which crosses over to Laos. After clearing Thai immigration, we boarded a shuttle bus to the Laos immigration, which was followed by a shuttle bus into Hua Sha. I met Full Moon, the owner of the BAP guest house where I stayed. She worked for the CIA during the Vietnam War. She trained the Air America cruise Laotian. While staying there, I met 2 Chinese travelers, Joy and Yan from Chongqing, who were marketers for an import-export clothing company and had gotten laid off because of the coronavirus outbreak. In 2005 and 2013, I took these boats, and about 90% of the passengers were local Laotians. And this time, 90% were tourists. What a change. It looks like this boat would sink if this guy stops bailing. The first time I came to Pak Ben in 2005, I stayed at a place that had a generator that turned off at 9 p.m. Had squat toilets with water buckets instead of showers. As we pulled into Pak Ben for the night, one of the many young touts took me to the Doshan guest house, where they gave me a great comfortable upstairs room with a view of the Mekong River. We would continue west all day to our Luang Prabang destination. We boarded a different and much cleaner and safer boat that was crewed by a family of 3. This one even had comfortable seats and life preservers. I was glad that they continued to stop along the way for villagers to get on and off these boats. The wife and son were adept at pulling the boat at these stops. This was the narrowest part of the river where the captain slowed down the engine and shot through this rock-walled passage. This was the only stop where there was a dock. In some cases, boatmen met our boat to transfer passengers. I continue to see these big Chinese projects throughout Asia. This cave holds about 1,000 Buddhas and was a refuge during the Vietnam War bombings. I stayed at this guest house last time I was here. They even have CNN. I had Lao coffee with Yan and Joy, who were worried that Thailand may be closing its borders to Chinese because of the coronavirus. This early morning Taj Bat ritual was about the same as I saw when I was last here, except some of the monks would share their alms with the poor people along the route, those who were kneeling with their open bags. I enjoyed walking up to the Pho So Wat with its small shrine and great views of Luang Prabang and the Mekong River. I joined a tour of the Kuang Si waterfalls, which was not only highly recommended, but also greatly enjoyed. It was beautiful and the water was warm. Even the monks dipped into these waters. Throughout Southeast Asia, all schools were about to close because of coronavirus. But on this day, kids enjoyed school activities. My next stop was to travel by bus for 8 hours to Phono Savant, where I would explore the Plain of Jars. I experienced 3,221 curves on this route, which made my trip to Pai look easy. It was a rough ride with all of these curves and road construction combined with heavy smoke at times from the slash and burn agriculture. They said it was an air-conditioned bus, but the only air conditioning was the open door. We passed by the tunnel the Chinese were building for a high-speed train through Laos and Vietnam to the South China Sea. We took 2 rest stops, and this one was the fancy one compared to the bush stop we would later take, men to the right and women to the left. After checking into my nice hotel in Phono Savant, I learned that 270 million tons of bombs were dropped on Laos during the Vietnam War, more than used in World War II. They killed more than 50,000 Laotians, 20,000 of them by the 80 million unexploded ordnances. Each year, there are about 50 casualties. When I checked with the Surath Tours for a tour of the Plain of Jars, they said because of the coronavirus, there were not enough tourists. Instead, they recommended I rent a motorcycle to tour it myself. I sealed the deal with some rocket fuel. I rode to Site 1, and there I was admonished to stay on all of the established trails because they had been demined. I visited just 3 of the 90 sites that have been identified, with over 2,100 jars found so far. These jars, ranging in sizes from 3 to 9 feet, may be from 1,000 to 2,000 years old, and may have been used for food or water storage, human urns, and even fermentation vats. The area was heavily bombed, which damaged many of the jars. The archaeology project, along with demining efforts, continue to reveal more about the civilization that created this site. This cave is where over 350 people died when the U.S. bombed the area. It was thought to be a crematorium used by the past civilizations based on finding charred remains and the ceiling vent hole. Site 2 was at a beautiful setting under these shade trees, with the moss, lichen, and liverwort covering most parts of these jars. Some jars were broken from nearby bomb blasts, and across the way there were more clusters of jars. To get to Site 3, we had to cross over a bamboo bridge, a number of dry rice paddies, and pass some grazing animals. Again, these jars were clustered under these shade trees, and there was one broken jar that made for a corny photo opportunity. The Nam River is now dried up, as are many other rivers, because the Chinese have dammed them up for hydropower. After the international buses to Vietnam were canceled because of coronavirus and a lack of customers, I decided to try to get there by taking local buses to Nong Het, which was just 12 kilometers from the Vietnamese border. It would take me about 3 hours. From there, I hoped to find other transportation to the border. This local bus was filled with passengers along with lots of packages and goods, as though it were a UPS van. Shortly after we left, the brakes seized up and the battery died and had to be replaced. Our driver had a spare battery and got the brakes repaired, kind of. He disconnected one of the brakes that was seizing up. Along the way, we picked up and dropped off passengers and packages, including this woman with a basket of lemongrass. We got to Nong Het, a small village with just a public market about 12 kilometers from the Vietnam border. There were no public transportation facilities. I approached a group of young guys and asked if someone could take me to the Vietnam border. A young fellow named Lao indicated he would take me. I hopped on and he carefully drove me to the border, which was closed until 1 p.m. There were only 5 trucks waiting and 5 pedestrians. We did not discuss price, so when I got to the Lao border, I gave him 6,000 kip, or about $7. He seemed surprised to get anything. After clearing immigration, which included a COVID-19 temperature check and providing contact tracing information, I negotiated with the taxi motorcycle guys for a ride to the nearest town, Hoa Binh, about 40 miles and $17. There was not much negotiating since there were no other options at this very quiet crossing. Only 5 trucks and no cars passed in the 2 hours while I was clearing immigration at this crossing. When I got to Hoa Binh, I got off and looked for accommodations, but after an hour of walking about, I learned there was only one hotel, so I ended up staying there. When I sat down at this cafe, I was served a bowl of pho bo without even ordering. I was joined by a local high school English teacher who was getting a to-go order. He said not many tourists come this way. In the morning, I followed the hotel staff instructions to go to the street and flag down a minibus bound for Vinh. It was an easy 5-minute wait. This 4-hour, 160-mile drive would be down from the highlands to the flat land filled with rice paddies along the South China Sea. At this rest stop, I bought some banh chung wraps at this factory. It was a leaf-wrapped meat and rice treat. That was my breakfast. Near the end of this ride, the route changed from hilltop landscape to flatlands where rice paddies were the norm. When I got to the Vinh train station, I had time to enjoy a latte and banh mi before boarding the train to Dong Hoi. Trains are my favorite form of transportation, and this did not disappoint. I got an air-conditioned soft seat for 154,000 dong, or about $6.60, for this 4-hour ride. The ride was smooth along this 124-mile flat land filled with rice paddies, with the occasional karst jutting up as we headed south along the South China Sea. We pulled into Dong Hoi about 4 hours later. From there, I took an hour bus ride to Son Trac, where I would explore some amazing caves. Hotel and tour staff told me that business was down by 60% or more because of the increasing concern with the coronavirus. I stayed at the Thien Thanh Hotel for 3 nights in a comfortable and clean room and a pool for just $8.50 a night. This all-day tour, including lunch for $50, would take me to the Paradise and Pha Na caves. The Paradise Cave stretches over 35 kilometers, and we were only able to see the first kilometer. Our guide, Viet, told us that this was the second largest cave in the world, just after the Mammoth Caves in the U.S. The walkways took us to some amazing views of this cave with its stalactites and stalagmites, and continued for another 31 kilometers. The different colors we saw were caused by the different minerals. Magnesium produced a blue-green, iron produced a red on the stalagmites and overhead stalactites. After lunch, we explored our next cave by water called Pha Na Cave. Our pilot was a woman, as were many, because their spouses had left for overseas or city work for more money. This cave is about 8,000 meters long with 14 grottos and a 14,000 meter long underground river. You can also tour this cave by kayak, including the underground river.
The cave is the mountain, so when it's rain outside, the water. Yeah, thank you. As you know, the biggest cave in the world, I mean Tono Cave, and the third largest cave in the world, I mean Hang An, and Phong Nha Cave. This cave, I belong to Phong Nha Cave system. Okay, now we get off the boat. We leave life jacket on the boat.
The 7-hour sleeper bus from Son Trac to Hoi An, about 240 miles, saved me a lot of bus and train transfers. It was a painful experience because I was too tall for the short sleeper seats, but it only cost $8.50. Hoi An is my favorite city in Vietnam with its harbor, markets, museums, restaurants, and craft and art galleries. Hoi An is an UNESCO historical site with over 800 preserved buildings, with 18 open to the public. During the Vietnam War, both sides agreed not to bomb nor war in this city to preserve it for generations to come. I was surprised to see the contemporary performances at the traditional performance hall compared to what I had seen when I was here a few years ago. This hall was built by the heads of 6 families who had fled China in the 17th century. Hoi An provides glimpses into ancient Hoi An by offering tours of the family homes. This home was built 2 centuries ago and was hosted by the 8th generation of the family. She provides us with descriptions of the Chinese, Japanese, and Vietnamese symbols found throughout their home.
A living room here is Japanese architecture, with 5 wooden columns on the wall. It represents 5 basic elements: metal, wood, water, fire, earth. That is Japanese. The ceiling over there, ceiling above the lantern there is curl like the back of crab or the back of turtle. That is Chinese. Vietnamese architecture on the 2nd floor with the yin and yang tiles. The house in Hoi An here is very long and narrow. Many believers turtle for long life and bright younger forever. And here, Japanese architecture. You see 5 small elements, 5 people, and symbol of 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. And here,
these ancestor boxes of the Tran family contain tablets of the names, dates, births, and death, and other highlights. They are opened on anniversaries as remembrance of them.
Inside the box written biography of Hathaway.
These are photos of more recent family members. Here is a combination museum and gift shop.
Yes. Nowadays we can find a lesson. From here we collect the point and after collection.
Hoi An at night turns into a magical place of lights and sounds. With the new bridge, there are no longer ferry boat commuters, but the waterfront market continues. Even in Hoi An, weaving traffic continues.
Oh, very beautiful young man.
All schools were closed in Vietnam because of the coronavirus pandemic. My room-to-read school visit was canceled here and in Cambodia. I took this $1 bus ride to Da Nang, where I got a 5-hour Air Asia flight back to Bangkok for just $51. When I got to Bangkok, I saw this coronavirus sanitizer at the entrance to one of the covered malls. From Bangkok, I headed back to Ko Samet Island. Because there were fewer tourists, the boats now included cargo as well as passengers. Upon landing, all passengers were required to have a COVID-19 temperature check and apply hand sanitizer before entering the island. The Thai government had closed all travelers from China, so these hotels, restaurants, and shops that catered to large tour groups from China were without customers. As I made my way to the Ao Pudsa Bungalows, I noticed the beaches and restaurants were almost empty, save for a lone unicorn. With my return to Ko Samet, I had planned to relax here before traveling to Cambodia. However, my bungalow neighbors told me that Cambodia had closed its borders because of the coronavirus pandemic. This fire show performer had few customers. Since Cambodia was closed, I was planning to extend my stay in Thailand when I got an email step alert from the U.S. State Department. They had issued a level 4 health advisory that said return immediately or plan to stay in place indefinitely. It now seemed like the only newly arrived tourists were Russians or Thai weekenders from Bangkok. When I went to the pharmacist, I saw that she was putting all of the money into an alcohol solution. My return bus to Bangkok was almost empty. When I got to Bangkok, I saw that all the shops and malls had closed. All public transportation now required mask wearing. Here are some closure signs. Nothing to do, nothing to see. I then went to the Bangkok airport and returned home a month earlier than planned. My Korean air flight on March 23rd to Incheon was almost empty, and after a temperature check at immigration, so was the airport. My flight to Seattle was almost empty as well. When I got to Seattle, the airport was empty, as was the light rail and the streets of downtown Seattle. Within 4 days, I ended up getting COVID-19, which affected me for another 2 weeks. It was a strange way to end this journey.